Tonight's story was sent to me by someone who asked to remain anonymous. As always, names and locations have been changed. Whether you believe it is entirely up to you. There are certain things in life that you never think to question. The road you take home every night, the shape of your own house, the sound of your own footsteps. Some things are so familiar that your brain simply accepts them. You don't stop to check, you don't stop to wonder. Because why would you? A road is a road, a house is a house, and if something has always been there, surely someone would remember. That was what I believed, until the night I found a house that didn't exist. I had driven along Hollow Creek Road hundreds of times. It was the kind of road most people avoided after dark, not because anything bad had happened there, actually, the opposite. Nothing had ever happened there. It was just a long stretch of empty road surrounded by fields and thick eucalyptus trees. No shops, no houses, no streetlights, just darkness. The kind of darkness where your headlights feel like they are barely reaching far enough ahead. I used the road because it saved me about 15 minutes on my drive home. And after 3 years of taking the same route, I knew every part of it. I knew the sharp bend near the old wooden fence. I knew the broken telephone pole leaning slightly toward the road. I knew the empty field on the left side where nothing had grown except tall grass and weeds. There was nothing there. There had never been anything there, until that night. It was just after midnight when I first saw it. At first I thought I was tired. I had worked late, and my eyes had been staring at computer screens for most of the day. So when a warm yellow light appeared through the trees ahead, my first thought was simple. Someone must have built a house there. Maybe I just never noticed, but that didn't make sense. Not after 3 years, not after driving past that exact spot hundreds of times. I slowed the car down. The closer I got, the clearer it became. There was a house sitting beside the road, not an abandoned building, not a rundown shack. A real house, 2 stories, a wide front porch, warm lights glowing behind the windows, a chimney releasing a thin trail of smoke into the cold night air. It looked like it had been there for decades, like it belonged, and somehow, that made it even stranger. I pulled my car onto the side of the road and turned off the engine. For a moment I just sat there. The headlights illuminated the front of the house. Everything about it felt normal. Too normal. There was a small garden near the porch, a wooden fence around the property, a mailbox beside the driveway, the kind of house you would drive past and never think twice about. Except I knew this road, and I knew this house wasn't here yesterday. I checked my phone. No signal. Of course. Hollow Creek was always like that. I opened my map application anyway, expecting to see some explanation. Maybe I'd somehow taken a different road. Maybe I was further away from home than I thought, but the map loaded, and the blue dot showing my location sat exactly where I expected, on Hollow Creek Road, beside an empty field, not beside a house. I stared at the screen. Then I looked back through the windshield. The house was still there. A small feeling started building in my chest. Not fear, not yet, something else. The feeling you get when you know something is wrong, but you can't explain why. I should have driven away. Looking back, that's what I wish I had done. I wish I had started the engine, put the car into gear, and never looked back. But curiosity has a way of convincing us that we're safer than we really are. So I opened the car door and stepped outside. The air was colder than it should have been. The kind of cold that doesn't come from the weather. The kind that feels like you're standing somewhere you weren't meant to be. I walked slowly toward the house. The gravel beneath my shoes sounded unusually loud. Every step echoed through the silence. Then I noticed something. The front door was open, just slightly. Not enough to look inviting. Just enough to suggest someone had opened it and was waiting for me to arrive. I stopped at the bottom of the driveway, and that's when I saw the mailbox. There was no street number, no family name, no address, just one word written across the front, my name. Ethan. I remember standing there for a long time, trying to convince myself there was a reasonable explanation. Maybe it was a coincidence. Maybe someone knew me. Maybe this was some kind of prank. But deep down, I already knew none of those explanations made sense, because the strangest part wasn't that there was a house on Hollow Creek Road. The strangest part was that somehow the house knew I was coming. I stood outside that house for almost a full minute before I finally moved. A full minute of staring at an open door. A full minute of telling myself I should leave. But there was something about the house that made leaving feel impossible, Not because I was trapped, not because something was forcing me to stay. It was something much worse. It felt familiar, like I had been there before. I walked up the driveway slowly. Every step felt heavier than the last. The strange thing was, the closer I got to the house, the less afraid I felt. And that should have been comforting, but it wasn't. Because fear would have made sense. Fear would have been normal. Instead, I felt like I was returning somewhere I had forgotten. The front porch creaked beneath my feet. The wood looked old, but not damaged. Everything about the house seemed carefully maintained. A rocking chair sat beside the front door. A small wind chime hung from the roof. A welcome mat rested on the ground. Nothing unusual, nothing scary, and somehow that made it worse. I reached for the door. I hesitated. Then I knocked. The sound echoed through the house. I waited. Nothing. I knocked again. Still nothing. The door moved slightly, not opening, just moving. As if someone on the other side had touched it. I should have left. I know that. But instead, I pushed the door open. The first thing I noticed was the smell. Old wood, dust, and something else. Something I couldn't place. It wasn't unpleasant. Actually, it was comforting. Like walking into a house you had visited 100 times before. The hallway was dimly lit. A small lamp sat on a table near the entrance. The walls were covered with photographs, family photographs. I stepped closer. At first, I thought they were normal. A family at the beach, a birthday celebration, a Christmas morning. Just ordinary moments. Then I noticed something strange. None of the faces were clear. Not blurry, not damaged. Just impossible to focus on. Every time I looked directly at them, my eyes seemed to slide away. Like my brain refused to recognize what it was seeing. I moved further inside. The living room was exactly what I expected. A fireplace, a couch, a bookshelf, a television, a small wooden coffee table, and on that coffee table, a photograph. This one was different. The image was clear. I picked it up, and immediately felt my stomach drop. It was a photograph of the house, taken from the front yard, the same porch, the same windows, the same garden, except there was something impossible about it. Written on the back of the photograph was a date, 20 years earlier. I stared at the photo, trying to understand. The house wasn't just old, it wasn't something that had appeared overnight. According to the date, it had been there for decades. I placed the photograph back down. Then I noticed something else, a clock hanging above the fireplace. The hands weren't moving. The time was frozen. 12:17. I looked at my phone. 12:17. Exactly. A strange coincidence. That was what I told myself. Because the alternative was something I wasn't ready to consider. I walked through the rest of the house. Every room felt slightly wrong. Not obviously wrong, just enough to make me uncomfortable. The kitchen had plates sitting neatly on the table, 2 cups beside the sink, a kettle on the counter, like someone had just stepped away moments earlier. Then I reached the upstairs hallway. There were 3 doors. 2 were closed, 1 was open, and from inside, I heard something. A quiet sound, like someone moving around. I froze. Every instinct told me to leave. But before I could turn around, the sound stopped. The house became silent again, completely silent. I slowly walked toward the open door. I don't know why. Maybe because I wanted an explanation. Maybe because some part of me already knew what I would find. The room looked familiar. Too familiar. A bed against the wall, a desk near the window, a bookshelf in the corner, a small crack in the paint near the ceiling. I had seen that crack before, because I had one exactly like it. I stepped closer. My breathing became shallow. The room wasn't similar to mine. It wasn't just decorated the same way. It was my room. The same bed, same desk, same books, same old mark on the wall where I had once hid it moving furniture. Even the small scratch on the floor beside the bed was there. A scratch I remembered making years ago. I stood completely still, trying to find a logical explanation, but there wasn't one. Because this wasn't a house that looked like mine. It wasn't a house inspired by my memories. It was my bedroom, inside a house that didn't exist. Then I noticed something sitting on the desk, a notebook, old, worn, familiar. I picked it up, And when I opened the first page, I saw my handwriting. The first sentence, written inside, was, "I don't know how many times I've been here." I dropped the notebook, and for the first time that night, I felt real fear. Because suddenly, the question wasn't, how did this house appear? The question was, how long has it been waiting for me? I left the notebook sitting on the desk. I didn't pick it up again. I didn't want to know what else was written inside, because some part of me already understood. The house wasn't showing me something new, it was showing me something I had forgotten. I walked back downstairs as quickly as I could. I didn't run, I don't know why. Maybe because running would have meant admitting that something was chasing me, and at that point, I still wanted to believe there was a normal explanation. I reached the front door, the same door I had entered only minutes earlier. I grabbed the handle, it didn't move, I pulled harder. Nothing. The door was locked. I stepped back. My heart started beating faster. I looked around the hallway. The photographs on the walls were different now. The faces were clearer, and for the first time, I could see them. They weren't strangers, they were people I recognized, people from my life, old friends, neighbors, people I hadn't seen in years. And standing in the middle of every photograph was me. I walked closer to one picture. It showed a birthday party. I remembered the day. I remembered the house. I remembered being there. Except the memory didn't make sense, because the party had never happened at this house. It had happened at my childhood home. I looked back toward the stairs. The house was changing, not dramatically, not like something from a nightmare. It was much more subtle than that. The wallpaper was different. The furniture had moved. The hallway felt smaller, like the house wasn't becoming something else. It was becoming something I knew. Then I heard the sound again. A footstep upstairs, slow, careful. Someone walking across the floor. I didn't call out. I didn't ask who was there, because deep down, I already knew. I moved toward the staircase. Every instinct told me not to, but I needed answers. I needed to know why this place existed, why it knew my name, why it knew my memories. Halfway up the stairs, I saw something sitting on the railing. A newspaper, old and yellowed. The headline caught my attention immediately. Local man missing. After house fire on Hollow Creek Road. My hands started shaking. I picked up the newspaper. The article was dated 20 years earlier. The location was the same. The road was the same. The house was the same. The article described a fire that destroyed a farmhouse. The owner was listed as Ethan Parker. I stared at the name. My name. For a moment I couldn't breathe. Then I saw the photograph beside the article. The man standing in front of the burned house, the man everyone believed had disappeared, was me. I dropped the newspaper. The hallway went completely silent. Then from upstairs, I heard my own voice, quietly saying, "Ethan?" I froze. Because the voice wasn't calling my name like it had just learned it. It sounded relieved, like it had been waiting years to say it. I ran. I don't remember reaching the front door. I don't remember unlocking it. 1 second I was inside the house. The next I was standing outside in the cold night air. The house was gone. The field was empty. The road was exactly how I remembered it. For a few minutes I just stood there, trying to convince myself that I had imagined everything. That exhaustion had finally caught up with me. Then I looked down. Something was lying on the ground near my feet. The notebook. The same notebook I had left upstairs. I didn't open it. I never will. Because I already know what it says. The last page has only one sentence. The same sentence I found written on the first page. I don't know how many times I've been here. I still drive past Hollow Creek Road sometimes. I tell myself I do it to prove the house isn't there. To remind myself that it was just a strange night, a mistake, a memory that didn't belong to me. But every time I pass that empty field, I look toward the trees, and sometimes, just for a second, I see a warm light shining through the darkness. The house isn't there, not anymore, but I've learned something. Some places don't disappear because they were never real. Sometimes they disappear because they are waiting for the right moment to return. And if you ever find yourself driving down Hollow Creek Road after midnight and you see a house where there should only be an empty field, don't stop, don't look inside, and whatever you do, don't answer if someone inside calls your name. You have been listening to Coal After Dark, where every story begins with something familiar and ends somewhere you never expected to go. If you enjoyed tonight's story, make sure to subscribe and join us for more slow burn horror, unsettling mysteries, and stories designed for the quiet hours of the night. Until next time, keep the lights on, check the doors, and remember, some places are forgotten, but some places never forget you. Good night.